Jamise, thank you. And also, according to two new studies out from the CDC, booster shots of Pfizer and Moderna vaccines are safe and offer high levels of protection against severe COVID, but that protection can wane over time. Dr. Anand Swaminathan is with us, and he is an emergency room physician joining us this morning from Westfield, New Jersey. And Dr. Swaminathan, thanks for being back. I want to address this that we just heard from Jamise's package. People are out there believing that I may just get a light case of COVID. I may just, a lot of people I talked to didn't really get that sick. And that's true. I mean, we need to point that out. That is actually true. But do we know enough about this disease yet for people to walk around and say, I'd rather get it than not get it and take the shot?
Frankly, no, we don't know enough. We've only been dealing with this virus for a little bit over 2 years. And the long-term effects, we have no idea about. We're going to find that out as time goes on. My children, if they go into medicine, they're the ones who are really going to be seeing these long-term effects in kids and young adults. And we know that viruses can cause these long-term inflammations. So whether it be hepatitis C, whether it be HIV, you do see increased rates of heart attack, of other cardiovascular events with those disorders. And we might be seeing this with COVID as well. We just don't know yet. This is the first hint. It's the first inkling that we're going to see that. We need to see more information, which is just a matter of time. We need to let the time play out and see. But what it really underscores is the fact that you don't want to get this if you can avoid it. Best way to avoid it is by getting vaccinated and getting boosted. That is critically important, especially as our vaccine rates in this country continue to lag behind other developed countries.
Is this an example where America knows too much? In other words, are we so smart we're stupid when it comes to this particular virus? Because we can Google everything. We have our Facebook feeds, we have our friends, we have Twitter, and everybody has an opinion. But the facts seem to be evading a lot of these logical discussions. This is the first major virus and pandemic in the information age of Google and Facebook and all the other social media tools out there. Is this hurting us?
Well, what I would change of what you said is not information, but misinformation or disinformation. And from certain players, malinformation, maliciously placed information. That's what a lot of what we're dealing with is. And I don't blame individual people for not being vaccinated, for believing these lies. It's the individual person has a very hard time teasing out which information is true and which is false. It's why we need better overall regulation to say this is disinformation, this is misinformation, and it's hurting people. And so what we need to really focus on are reliable sources of information that can really help to educate people, bring them up to speed. A lot of what I do in my practice when I talk to people who aren't vaccinated is I sit there and I ask them why. Why haven't you gotten vaccinated? Let's talk about it. What are your concerns? And I let them talk for a couple of minutes. And often what they tell me are things that are frank misinformation or disinformation, and I can help to dispel that. And a lot of patients, when we take the time with them, they come around. They say, "Oh, well, I didn't know that was misinformation, and you're right. I should get a vaccination." And we're able to convince a lot of people simply by showing them where the information that they've been getting is false and what the real information is.
So let's talk about these CDC studies. If someone is fully vaccinated and they had their booster shot, is there anything in these two reports that they should be worried about in the near future?
Well, I think when we talk about vaccinations and boosters, we have a little bit of a trouble of what our focus should be on of them preventing. Vaccines and boosters do an excellent job of preventing severe infection, hospitalization, serious outcomes. But over time, the effect on preventing any infection is going to wane. So you get a booster, and for a couple of months, you have a high level of protection against any infection. But that wanes over time, and that's because the antibodies that it generates just don't keep circulating in our body all the time, which means that you can still get infected, especially as time goes from you getting your last vaccination. But the protection against severe infection continues, that maintains, and that's really what we have to be focused on. We want to create a herd immunity, and I'm using herd immunity a little bit differently, but we want to create a herd immunity against severe outcomes. And we can do that by getting our primary series, by getting boosted. The booster is probably most important for older individuals. And by older, and I hate to say this because I'm approaching this number, but it's anybody over 50, anybody with medical issues, and those who are immunocompromised. The booster is particularly important in protecting against those serious outcomes. And even as the protection against any infection wanes, the protection against serious outcomes maintains, and that's really what we have to be focused on preventing.
There will come a time when you will like 50, by the way. I'll just put that out there. But we've got about 30 seconds left, and I want to make sure I phrase this question right. For people who have their shots and are boosted, are we now leaving the pandemic phase of this disease and moving into the endemic phase?
I wish I could say that, but I don't think we're quite there yet, especially because that immunity is going to wane against any infection, and we don't know what the next variant is going to hold for us. But those people who have been vaccinated and boosted, you have done everything you can in terms of vaccination to protect yourself. At this time, you are highly protected against serious outcomes. And so the things that you can do to continue to protect yourself from any infection is to mask in public, to mask indoors, to test when you're going to gather. These are things that we can continue to do to prevent any infection from occurring, despite whether our vaccines wane in efficacy against any infection or not.
And you will promise me that you will not go into business in a medical practice with Dr. Chakraborty. Dr. Anand Swaminathan, emergency room physician. As always, I thank you very much for being with us. You're watching DC Today. We will be right back.